more iPad Pro analysis, and the M1 iMacs. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by you, our viewers and listeners, through our Patreon and PayPal sponsorship options. To learn more, visit macvoices.com/support. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This is part 2 in a 3-part MacVoices live conversation we had only hours after Apple's Spring Forward event concluded. In the first edition, we talked about the AirTags and started a conversation about the iPad Pro. This time around, we wrap up that iPad Pro conversation and take a deep dive into the M1 Macs. So, here we go.
They want to put the Pro back in the Pro of the iPad Pro is my thinking. So the way that you do that is by hooking it to serious hardware. And if you're going to hook it to serious hardware, you need to be able to do serious stuff with it now that it's hooked to its serious hardware. So
I think that just happened. You know, it worked. They didn't. I doubt if they went out of their way to make it work. It probably just like, oh, look, you know, it works. So we might as well mention that. But I can't imagine they think anybody's going to buy it. And
Apple never just might as well mentions anything.
No, they did it because they want to distinguish leave the iPad Air as a device that's standalone now. Before this came out, it wasn't, because the Pros that were very, very close in proximity of what processing speed. Now they've pulled the Pro away from the Air, so now the Air can have its own product line now, and you can feel confident that you're buying a completely different product than the Pro. And then by adding all the other stuff that they've added to this, I mean, the M1 processor, I reacted like, holy cow, this is such a game changer, because this, I mean, I've already experienced it in my Mac Mini M1, and this regardless if you get the 11 or the 12.9 model, both of them are going to scream. Really, your only difference is, as we just discussed, is the display. And I'm a guy who likes the 11. I think the 11 is a good size for me, and I'm happy with it. That's what I have currently, and that's probably what I'm going to go with when I trade up. Because this XDR is really for a major Pro. If you max this thing out with the 2 terabytes of storage, it's like $2,400 for an iPad Pro 12.9 inch device, and that's just extreme.
it doesn't take much to turn it into something that's more than a laptop.
$18.99 for the 1 terabyte.
Okay.
So, but again, if Kelly's right and they're trying to put the Pro back in Pro, then that level of a machine is what a Pro would use, right, or somebody that has Pro needs, and so it's a Pro budget. So you can get into all that technology for something that's a lot less expensive if you don't need all that. But if you need it, there you go. And yet they had to do something, because the last iPad that they introduced, everybody was screaming how wonderful it was, and it was amazing and would do everything. Now we have an iPad that, okay, at the moment we don't have Pro apps necessarily, as Jeff was outlining, ready for it. But on the other hand, I don't know how much you've played with LumaFusion, but that's a Pro level app.
LumaFusion is bonkers good.
Yeah,
and I sync my footage across devices and like my projects, then it would be just ridiculous. I'd be so all over that, but I can't.
But I think, Britt, I think you need to look into that, because there is some round tripping. Through XML that you can do between desktop Final Cut and LumaFusion.
And can't you run LumaFusion on a
No,
M1
I can run
Mac now?
Yes, I can run it on my Mac. That's fine. LumaFusion. But a project on my Mac lives on my Mac. A project on my iPad lives on my iPad. And if I'm wrong about that, I'd love to be corrected. But I could not see a way to share. Can't
use iCloud Drive?
I couldn't see a way. I have a project on my iPad, and it only lives on my iPad. I can't use it on my Mac.
Can you airdrop it to your Mac though and have that work?
I think you can.
Yeah, you can.
I don't know,
because I've talked to Terry. She's been on the show, and I know that was one of the things that they had announced a while back, and it was one of the things that I'm still rocking a much older iPad Pro, And so it was doable. It just was not convenient. This, with the Thunderbolt connection and everything, all of a sudden this becomes very, very doable. So I'm anxious to.
No,
really
I want a thing that
syncs
live. I make a change, it exists on the other device. Not I move a project, it exists.
That's not going to happen for video for a long time.
This is my holy grail that I am working towards.
But I think I'm not even sure you can do that with any platform short of some of the cloud editors.
I can't get messages to do that.
Right. Like I think the Adobe one can do it, but Adobe.
Okay. Well, thank you there.
But how do you really feel?
Yeah.
And then they added some enhancements with the four speaker audio, which was great. And then I'm going to be curious to hear how the mics sound, because the studio quality mics, and they were really spouting that off on the Macs too. But even on the iPad, I'd be curious to see how truly good sounding it is. And do you really need to have a mic if you're doing something impromptu, because us with our gear, we want to hook everything up and have a mic and the whole thing. You might be able to get away with just using it and getting a decent result with that.
And the video following looks really interesting.
Center stage.
Yeah, center stage.
I'm inappropriately excited about that.
No,
I was pretty excited.
Somebody said that.
See you later, Jeff.
I don't know if it's I don't know quite if it's like a hardware thing or a software thing, but I saw a couple of people who talked today, who were talking about it today, who mentioned that like that's not just FaceTime. That is a thing. That is a capability of the device that Zoom, for example, would be able to use that.
Yes, Apple has an API for that now.
So that's the part that I think is interesting about that didn't really get a lot of attention, was Apple saying this isn't just a FaceTime feature.
But it looked like only a back camera option. Was I wrong about that?
No, it's the front-facing camera. So if you're doing like FaceTime stuff, that's what's tracking you. And
that's why people pointed out it's not just FaceTime.
Said they were using their wide angle lens and then
it's
that's on the back.
New camera that has a wide angle on the front. So it's a 12 megapixel wide angle camera for the front facing camera. Yeah.
Oh.
And then in software, it's panning with software.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Automatic.
For the cooking show that I'll definitely do because I can cook.
There you go.
I would watch your bread making show.
Okay, fair, but that's really short.
More bread making shows. Oh.
But now but I mean, it is because when they said the ultra wide, I thought, okay, that's great. But the only trouble is that, after a while, you can only do so much with ultra wide. And usually you're going to have to crop it. But this all of a sudden turns that into an extra feature where if I'm looking here and I move over here and it follows me and keeps me in the center, and then somebody else, comes in over beside me and it then pulls it so it's got us both in frame.
Yep.
I mean, I want to know if they open up the APIs for that.
They said yes.
Did they?
That's the thing I'm talking about, is that's not just FaceTime that will do that for you, which is great.
Because I want to know if the next Macs will have it.
Well, the next Mac finally got a camera upgrade to 2017, so maybe in another 5 years we'll get a camera this awesome in an iMac. Sorry.
No, you're not wrong.
That was my out loud voice. I'll be over here drinking.
Well, okay, so before we start down that path, let's
because I run Zoom off of my laptop, not my iPad. So I'm like, it's cool, but I don't think I'll ever use it.
Okay.
But on that camera, one thing that I would love to see with the tracking is if it made using the iPad for video calls feel natural, because as it stands right now, the camera's off to the side. So that means I either look at the screen and this is how I look to you, or I look at the camera and this is how I look to you. So I'm never actually looking at you. If this fixes that so I can look at the screen and it looks like I'm looking at you, I'm ready to drop the money on it today, even though my my current iPad Pro still works perfectly fine.
Well, and where is the front-facing camera?
It's still where it was
on
before.
The iPad. It's on the short end.
Top.
It's on the short end.
It's on the top for the portrait, yeah.
Well, it's on a short end, so it really only works in portrait mode. And everybody they showed using the iPad is shown using it laptop screen wise, where there's a long side on top, not a short side on top.
They did. Go ahead.
The demo they did, it looked like somebody was not really even looking at the screen. They were, doing something else, like in a kitchen or something. So that sort of,
But they would periodically look at the screen.
Yeah, but that's what I wonder about, because somebody else pointed that out too. Like, they show everybody using the iPad with a long side on the top and bottom, and they still put the camera on a short side. And somebody said, I have a Face ID iPad and I have to move my hand all the time because of that.
Yeah.
But
I
don't
pick
forget,
it up and my hand is over the Face ID screen, Face ID button. So
okay, but one other thing too, if you think about it, they were showing people that were, basically waist from the waist up. So it's far enough so that most of us are pretty close to our cameras. And so if if I look away over to see the chat, you can tell I'm not looking at you. But if the farther away you get, then it's not as evident that I'm not looking right there, right at the camera.
Bingo.
And so there's a little bit, I think that use case where this is going to be useful. Listen, at this range, I don't need center stage because I'm here.
Right.
But if I'm halfway across the room, then center stage is going to make perfect sense, and you're not going to have nearly that issue about the camera placement.
Just to I've got to pull this away because I know you want to get over to Max. I wanted to point out the 5G was added, but interesting to see Apple increase the price from $130 additional to $200 if you want to have a cellular version of the iPad. The other thing I was excited and I'm glad they did was they kept the Magic Keyboard compatible. But people spend $300 on a Magic Keyboard and then to become obsolete if they want to get a new iPad. Well, that's not the case. Then they added a white one.
I'm sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
Yeah, but they added a white one, and so now you have two colors available for the Magic Keyboard, and it works perfectly fine. It was working fine with my 2018 iPad Pro, and it works fine with this one. So I'm happy to see that.
That really ticked me off because I have been wanting for ages an Apple Bluetooth keyboard with the Touch ID, and I was always told why they couldn't have it. Now they have it for the new iMac. And I went on tonight to see if I could buy it separately in accessories.
Can't.
not yet.
No.
Not yet.
You'll be able to, but not yet.
But they
it'll
did
be
say,
down the road.
oddly, they said it would work with any M1 Mac. So
It works with it, but you can't buy it separately.
But you can't buy it. But
Right.
the fact that they said that, you can't buy it. You can't buy it, period, now, right? It's not available. You can't buy an iMac yet. So it's not that surprising that you can't buy the keyboard yet.
Yeah.
Remember when the iMac Pro came out and it was black, and every nerd on the internet felt faint over the fact that you could finally get a black one, and what they really liked was the black keyboard and space gray, whatever. I don't look forward to your letters. They're black. And like the keyboard and the trackpad were a thing that people really wanted, and eventually they were available and people were able to buy them, and it's fantastic. And that's the thing that I wanted to talk about that was the big thing to me on the iMac. The two things were the keyboard and the speakers, because those are the two things I think are the most interesting new things, because you get Touch ID on an external keyboard.
Good segue.
Okay. So is there any additional or wrap-up comments for the iPad Pro? I mean,
yes, if someone wants to buy me one, I'll settle for 1 terabyte, 12.9 inch space gray.
I'm going to second Jeff's. Like, I'm open to donations. Yeah.
I want to go to an iPad centric lifestyle, and I think this might have pushed me to it because my iMac is dying. It's a 2015.
Frank, I can see that for a lot of people. And when this iPad was announced today, I thought my dream of having a desktop Mac in my office and an iPad Pro, that's my mobile device, my only mobile device. We're like right there. We just need the right app support.
iOS 15 is going to be what seals that deal, I think, for you.
It very well could be. And at that point, it will no longer make sense for me to buy an Apple laptop.
Yeah.
Yep.
I still think, I said this at last year's WWDC on your show, Chuck, I think they're going to run Mac OS on tablets. The machine is totally powerful enough to do it. I mean, it's got the same spec as the Macs. You can get a keyboard and a mouse or trackpad for it now. You can run iOS apps when you're in Mac mode. So why not do it? I think, I would buy that in a second. And, rather than having a laptop and a tablet, I just want the tablet and I'll buy the Magic Keyboard and I'm good to go. And I can do everything. And I don't need special version of Final Cut and a special version of Xcode and, all the stuff, some of which is never going to be ported. So, I think they're gradually putting all the things in place where they could just flip a switch and you're good to go.
I have this visual image of large letters that say no with an exclamation point crashing down.
And how did that work out?
It would
Remember
have a
what they
period
said
at the
no
end of it.
about?
They still don't. They're not merged. They're not merged.
But here's the thing.
Yeah,
Here's what
they
makes
totally
me,
went back on that.
No.
I mean, they're not going to until they do. Number one, we
Right.
know that because that's like, that may as well be Apple's motto, right? Like whatever they say it is, it's really, we're not going to do that till we do it. I think we
Right.
can all agree.
However,
They knew they were making Apple Silicon Macs when they decided that there was going to be iOS and iPad OS. They knew that system on a chip was coming. They knew what the MacBook landscape was going to look like. They knew all of those things were coming the way that we have now seen them to be. They knew what that reality already looked like at that time when they went, now we're going to have iPhone OS and iPad OS. I know that's not what they're called. It's fine. So I think what they're trying to do is make iPad OS that middle ground where you can do things like eventually run Photoshop if Adobe is to be believed. They're not. You can run LumaFusion and Filmic Pro. You can do pro level audio editing. You can do pro level video editing. You can do pro level document creation, content creation, those sorts of things. Maybe there's even going to be an option, maybe this year, part of iPad OS 15, whatever they end up, numbers or whatever calling it, where you're going to be able to do something Xcode-esque on an iPad if you have an external keyboard and all that sort of stuff. So when they make that the option so that you can do all the stuff on your phone, but with a little more acreage and a little more comfortably on an iPad, and you don't need an entire laptop to do it, I think that's what is going to make the difference. And I think I don't think we should really deliver the verdict on this new iPad until we see what the new software looks like that it's going to be able to run. And we're not going to get that until June.
Not only that, Kelly, but first of all, this iPad to me represents a no compromises machine. Yes, at a price, but this is a no compromises machine. And so, and we're all, once again, we're falling into the trap of why can't it do it right now? I want it right now. And this has been an evolution, and it's going to continue to be an evolution. Whether it will evolve in the way we're talking about, I have no idea. But it would only make sense because, the one thing Apple will not do, or they try to avoid it at all costs, is to create a substandard experience. Because as soon as they do that, they've killed one of the things that is the golden goose, or the golden egg laid by the goose. So I don't think you're going to see Mac OS running on an iPad until you can do it with virtually no compromises. This might be the machine that does it.
Maybe.
That's it. So
there's an entire internet shouting challenge accepted at Apple right now for giving them an iPad with the same processor in it as the new laptop. So it's going to happen.
I mean, this machine could do it. It's a software question.
Yeah, exactly. If Apple will let it happen. So.
Yeah, it's totally whether Apple will let it happen. But look at pointing devices on the iPad. For years and years, Apple was like, no, we'll never do a pointing device on an iOS. Never. Yep, here it is. Great, full support. It's actually got better support than it does on Mac OS. So, who saw that coming? It was just like, no. Like you were saying, oh, yeah, here it is. Done.
Well, but Jim, I've heard that so many times, and I give the same answer all the time, that it would not have made any sense to have that pointing device on the original iPad because we didn't know how to use it. And the iPad was not powerful enough to, it would have been no better than what else was out there at the time. Apple waited until they could add the pressure sensitivity and they could do things with it that made it a whole lot more pen-like and paper-like. Because that's what I mean, Jeff, you're an artist.
I was just, my point was not whether they did it late or early, just that they consistently said we'll never do it, and then they did it. And they did a great job of it. They did not half-ass it. And, I recommend anybody to go back to last year and look at the sessions, and you don't need to be technical. They have, designing with pointing devices for iPad OS, fantastic talks. And it's just brilliant. And it really left me looking like, why doesn't my Mac do, what they've put into iOS? So they did a great job. But the point is that the Apple has a way of saying, yeah, no, we'll never. Yeah, here we're doing it. And I think they're going to do that too. The iPad OS, I think, like the differentiation from the phone now, iOS, it's kind of mostly a marketing thing from the developer's point of view. The APIs are almost, like 95% convergence or maybe higher. It's not really two different operating systems. But Mac OS is quite divergent, although they have been definitely moving them together. And a lot of that actually has been stuff on the iOS side. They've been making more Mac-like in terms of UI design and stuff. It's kind of interesting. It's not just that they're dumbing down the Mac, but like pop-up menus on iOS now, for example, which now work a lot more like Mac. And the whole Catalyst thing.
So let's move on to the iMac, because I know that at least a couple people are chomping at the bit. Jeff, new iMac. Is the new iMac for you?
No, it's not. But that's because of the screen size.
Right.
I need a bigger screen. If it wasn't for the screen, I could very easily see me just replacing my entire office setup with a new iMac and a new iPad Pro, and then dancing naked in the streets because it would be so epically awesome. And
you do that now?
Well, when it's warm out, sure. So not today. But yeah, this new iMac is this is a very cool machine, and it has a lot of potential in it. The place where I see people complaining already is, I want more ports. Well, sorry, people, it's an M1 processor. You're limited by the number of buses that it has. Therefore, you get the ports that you get.
But you also get
ports.
4, which is twice as much than the laptops have. So
Right.
simmer down.
Right. So
Assuming
yeah.
you get the midline model, because the low end model only has 2.
Right.
Correct.
And the low end model does not come with a charger that includes an Ethernet port.
Ethernet.
But my assumption is that Apple is looking at the people that are buying the entry level M1 iMac as a different audience than those that are buying the mid and the high range. So,
Right.
so the ports, it all makes sense. These are cool machines. They're freaking bonkers amazing. Why does it have a chin on it still? Because that's where the computer goes. The rest of it is a display.
Mhm.
The thing is so thin that they had to put a headphone jack on the side because it's not thick enough to put one on the back. The headphone jack would stick through the front if they did that. And yeah, the display is beautiful. My complaint about the colors, because I'm happy to see the colors come back. The front should not be the pastel version of the color. It should be the vibrant version, just like the back. Make the stand the pastel version and let me as the user see the cool color that everyone else is going to see or no one's going to see because it's against a wall.
Okay. Jeff, to the port point, if you have the real honest to God need, then you can go and buy a dock.
Right. Absolutely.
Or a mini.
Yeah. Also on the port thing,
Yes.
there's a delicious irony in the iMac having a magnetic charger cable and the MacBook not. But I think Apple might be telegraphing what's coming with future Macs. We might be going back to a MagSafe charger of sorts for the Mac lineup.
Although it sure doesn't look like that one on the iMac could work.
Oh, that
on a
would not
laptop.
translate to the Mac
Not at
because
all.
it's actually too thick to.
Right.
Yeah.
But magnetic, which means maybe more magnetic is coming. So.
Yeah.
But could this be Apple telegraphing that at some point our chargers will be a dock where you just plug the charger cable in and you have your Ethernet and maybe some other Thunderbolt or whatever?
This is my current MagSafe, my current favorite MagSafe theory. It's not my theory, but I run a home for Crackpot Theory. So, and I've run it for years. And somebody said like that what if MagSafe is basically like a Qi charger for your laptop? You set it on it and it's where the ports live so that your computer has none. And I like that. Speaking of other technology that came to the iMac, the thing that I mentioned earlier that I wanted to talk about was the speakers. And I think part of, I think this is the first example that we're going to get of Apple doing computational audio and having learned lessons from that computational audio and doing something with that. So I think in my mind, there's a straight line to be drawn from all the stuff they learned about the HomePod and what the speakers are like in this machine. I think that's 100% true because part of it is also computational audio because computational photography is part of why the camera in this is decent, even though it's, like a 2015, 2016 camera. It's still because they're able to force multiply upgrading that from the 720p that's in the computer I bought in December to the 1080p machine. Now that it's 1080p and force multiplied by computational photography on what, that they've learned from all the stuff they've been doing on iPhones, then that's going to make it, that's part of what they talked about, like making it nicer for Zoom calls and things like that, because they're never going to admit if you have an iPhone 6 in a drawer, it's a better camera than the one that we shipped you 3 months ago, or the one you could buy, today if you get a laptop. So, I think the audio and the video on this one is pretty interesting. And part of why it's interesting is because it's a teeny weeny little thing. Like when you look at it next to the iPad Pro on the same little Magna holder that the keyboard comes on or whatever it is, they look the same. And I think that's absolutely intentional, of course, but I think there's a little bit of synergy there. And I think part of that is the computational audio and the computational video.
And they even showed the system board. The system board was teeny weeny, and it had 2 little fans on it. So I mean,
Yep.
That's the reason why we had the bottom is because it has to accommodate that. But the rest of it's great. It's just impressive in its design.
I'm here to tell you, if the M1 iMac fan situation is anything like it is on the M1 laptop, I have yet to make mine make the jet engine noise that previous iterations have made when the fans are like at maximum volume and you start wondering if maybe your machine is going to achieve liftoff. Mine has never done that. The loudest I've ever gotten mine, and it was use all of my processor, transcode this video into this other bonkers format, and use all of the resources you have at your disposal in order to do it. It only ever gave me that like first gear fan, like what you hear when it kind of needs to come on and it runs for a little while, and then you start to wonder if it's gonna gear up or not, and then maybe it doesn't. Like so far, that's maximum fan on my laptop. That's one of the things that stands out about it to me the most. So if you get the same experience on that with an iMac, like that's unbelievable.
And they did spot out during the session. There was only 10 decibels, so you'll barely hear it. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chuck.
No, I want to get the chat room in here. Webb brought up, well, he's made 2 comments, and I'll sort of take them out of order first. He says, I thought putting the Ethernet port on the power supply was interesting, and I agree. And then Jim in the chat, our Jim here also put in the chat room that he said that the mention that the iMac is not thick enough to include an Ethernet port, which I think is exactly spot on. I think that was almost the only place they had to do it. And yet they had to do it because that gives you hardwired connectivity. And that's not something they're willing to give up yet for an iMac. Webb also said that he was surprised. He was surprised that they didn't bring out a 27-inch iMac. And I know I wasn't.
Not.
And Jeff, you were saying you weren't, and I'll let you say why you weren't.
All right. So I have a hypothesis that has multiple elements for this one. No 24-inch iMac, because we're going to get a 27-inch iMac at a later point with a newer version of the M processor that gives us more buses and more bandwidth overall, more storage, and it will be a higher level, a pro level iMac, if you will. The alternative hypothesis, and I hope that this one is completely wrong, but since we don't know Apple's numbers, it's also possible. People don't buy 27-inch iMac in large enough numbers to make it worthwhile to sell one. Therefore, it's just gone. And I hope that one's wrong, and that instead we're going to get a 27-inch M whatever Pro iMac.
That's my theory as well.
Yeah, and I'm having a hard time seeing that they would not be doing any 27-inch iMacs, Jeff. I mean, you're right. Yeah, we don't have it, but I still, that feels like to me that's the bread and butter machine, and this feels like more like they've broken the iMac into two different areas. They've got the consumer iMac, which we've seen now, sort of like the AirPod, the iPad. And we will be seeing a pro level, not necessarily an iMac Pro, but a much higher pro level iMac, as you said, with an M2 or M1X or whatever they call it, and more buses and a lot more things that people on this panel would go for. And that's not slamming the iMac that they just delivered. It's just
different target audiences.
I think there's a different market for each of those machines, just like there was a different market for the iPad Pro than there was, or for the iMac Pro than there was for the iMac or the eMac, or things before. So I think there's something to be said there.
Yeah.
They probably want to sell this to schools, which might have something to do with the timing of it being announced right now.
Well, that's a good point.
Maybe.
Yeah. Hey, I want to welcome Mark Fuccio in late, but always welcome. Mark, good to have you. Glad you were able to make it.
Thank you, everyone. It's good to be here. So carry on.
And it's been a great show. Well, we'll see everyone again next week.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think the iMac is a phenomenal machine for the price. The color, I have to admit, I was surprised at the colors, and I made this point earlier today. That just adds a whole lot of SKUs to every reseller, Apple Store and otherwise. And so, will we see all those available in Apple stores, or will some of the colors be only available directly from Apple or on delay? I don't know. That one surprised me.
Four of them are the entry-level Mac, the entry-level iMac. Like the $12.99 machine only comes in 4 colors, and the other 3 you have to go bump up to the $14.99, I think it is. Machine.
Yeah, it's a 16 gigabyte machine.
Yeah. So there is something for that. I was really excited to see the colors, and while we're on colors, the new Prince phone is also very exciting to me. I'm a little bit sad I can't get a purple one. And I'm going to be a little bit sadder when it turns out that fresh out of the box, the default ringtone is not Purple Rain, because it should be. And anyone who gets one and does not set it to that is incorrect, just so everyone knows. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm bummed it's not available on the Pro models.
Yeah, me too.
Same.
But
it was great to see all of the color come back. I love that.
We're still talking about Mac here.
Yeah, but right. Well, no, I can't let that go though, David. What is would you guys trade in your phones just to get a different color phone?
No, of course not.
Well, I hope. I mean, no.
But if I was buying a new one and now I have an option of purple, now I'm torn. Do I get blue or do I get purple?
No,
I'm not torn. I'm totally getting a purple one. I'm absolutely getting
Pacific blue. Works good for me.
Yeah, I got a color. Like I got the blue because the blue is really pretty. I didn't want a black phone or a white phone. I got the blue one because I liked the blue. It was a color that was available, and if I'd had an option for purple, I absolutely would have bought the purple one.
Yeah, not trading in though.
Yeah, I'm not going to trade it in for it. But if you'd given me a purple option at the time, I'd have a purple phone right now, and the ringtone would be Purple Rain.
I don't know. Mark, you put in our Slack this afternoon a comment about the purple phone.
Yeah, because my wife and I would just upgraded our phones to the 12 Pro Max, and saw today. And my wife has strong affinity towards the color purple, and when I told her about it, she says, does it come in? When's it available? I said, April 30th, and she said, oh, can it come in my phone? I said, I don't know. I better go check. And went and found out that no, it wasn't available. So, the iPhone Pro Max, the most capable, most expensive phone known to man, doesn't come in that one color. So go figure. I suspect that, it's something about relative volumes of the iPhone Pro Max versus the regular old iPhone 12, led them to do it. But it is certainly a disappointment for, I'm sure, all the reasons Kelly was saying before that I didn't hear, but there are a lot of people out there who would love that purple color.
Yeah, but you couldn't get the other ones, like the iPhone 12 Pro wasn't available in all the colors that the 12 was available in either. So like you could always get the 12 in lots of colors, and the Pro was available in fewer. So I'm not surprised.
Didn't pay attention to those colors because we were not interested in the iPhone 12. So like so many of these things, in just sort of psychological studies, right? They talk about grounding, and it comes from sort of how people approach and they look at something. So not having the choice of colors available on the iPhone 12 was an issue because we weren't even looking at it for consideration. But and now that they make a big deal of coming out with a brand new color, we feel discriminated against. So,
so is this the first time? Because I think the only other one that I think might have been the case is Product Red, but I do not remember a new color being introduced midstream.
No, this
Product
is
Red
for something I can ever recall.
definitely was.
Yeah,
It was, but that was it.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to figure out, was there just this incredible groundswell of demand for a purple phone? It just
or it wasn't ready.
I was going to say it wasn't ready.
The right color purple until.
Or they wanted to have more purchases that happened now for people who are diehard purple fans. I don't think it's a bad idea. When I saw it, I was like, that's a good marketing idea. As a person who got a blue phone, because eventually I'm going to hand it down to my boyfriend and he liked the color.
You were so sweet.
I know, I'm really great. But at the, as the tech person, I'm like, I care that you do the things that I want you to do. And if you're a nice color, great. I kind of actually ended up wishing I'd gotten the green one, not because I like that color of green as much as other greens, but because then I could have called it Yoda and it would have been judge me by my size to you because it's an iPhone mini. But I don't regret it because mostly that joke is not necessarily worth the color because I don't care. It's a good marketing idea. Lots of people care. Go for it.
The green they did put out was a very Boba Fett shade, and it made me very happy. And I did really agonize over whether or not I was going to get a green one last time, just for the record.
Yeah.
But you can get
I like the Pro green a little bit better than the mini green.
You can get a case and you can
Not
make
the point. Not the point.
Again, Chuck, I'm with you. I sort of don't care, but people care. People really care. Or otherwise they wouldn't have colors for their keyboards and mice, both kinds of mice that match the iMac.
No, I get that part, but I guess if there's something I'm going to put a case on, and maybe I'm still the weird one. Maybe nobody puts cases on their phones anymore, but I just don't get it. Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. Clear.
Case.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I'm testing a case for Nomad.
The bottom line is, Chuck, people care, and they may not be the kind of people who are on this panel.
Mm-hmm. Usually, but
they exist and they exist in high numbers.
I usually put a clear case on my phone because I like to show off the color that I picked, whatever color that may be. I like to show the color that it is. So I usually have a clear case on it for that reason.
I know so many people that have a case on their phone, on their iPhone, where it's something that's not related at all to the color of the phone. And you say, wow, that's a really cool case. And they say, yes, thanks. And my phone is blue or whatever.
Okay. I haven't had that
mean,
experience, Jen.
Remember,
They already had a purple case that matched the purple phone, by the way.
and remember, we already talked about like
Or complimented it. Sorry.
the Hermes thing for your thing that's $400 or whatever it is. Like the same, like obviously, I think it's pretty safe to say none of us are those people, but they exist or Apple wouldn't keep doing it. So same thing here. It would not surprise me in the least that somebody bought the purple phone because it was their mostest favoriteest color, or, you know, had the 11 and was waiting on it or whatever. I mean, yeah.
Our Mac Voices live discussion about Apple's Spring Forward event concludes in the next edition of Mac Voices, where we talk about everything else that we didn't get to already. Some of the Apple TV announcements, the Apple Card announcement, and more. That's next time on Mac Voices. Until then, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.